Here's what I want you to really listen for in this episode and why you should listen to it. Andy McCartney is somebody who I met through LinkedIn, and he is a second generation family owner of a machine shop in Ohio. There were other owners prior to his dad. But what I love about Andy and what I learned in this episode is that he's created a very unique recruiting program. He's put together a program where they go out to schools and they hire mechanical engineering graduates to come and work in the machine shop to actually get dirty and build cool stuff. And you're going to hear about how he runs that program kind of from beginning to end, why people come work there, how it energizes some of his more mature staff, older staff, people that have been there for a while, and how he's able to get the best and brightest from the engineering schools, particularly the best and brightest in the context of those who would be his right fits, his right people who actually want to learn the how to build things, not just how to put it on paper. Having been an engineer, civil engineering, starting my career in construction, I really appreciated this approach. And I think a lot of times that people in trades or people in a machine shop like this think that, goodness, there's a labor shortage, which there is. We know that. And you're not quite sure what to do about it. Well, Andy found something to do about it, and I think you're going to have your creativity and your imagination sparked. So I hope you give the whole episode a listen.
Welcome to the Business Builder Way podcast, where we help business builders grow leadership skills and wisdom and stay grounded through hero stories. So let's get after it.
I'm joined today by Andy McCartney, and Andy is the president and owner of Bowden Manufacturing, and he is in the Cleveland, Ohio area. Andy, thanks for joining us today to tell your story on the Business Builder Way.
Oh, Wayne, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. For anybody watching the video, I have your website pulled up in the background, and it's really solid. And there's some things here that I'd like to share with people. So I probably will pull that up, but we'll verbally kind of describe what's on the screen. So if somebody's listening, they're not lost and feeling like, they're not part of it. But the first thing I like to do, Andy, is like tell us a bit about how things are now. Tell us about the business that you're operating and what's going on in that. And that'll be a place where I can tie into some things I see on the website in the background.
Sure thing. So we're a CNC machine shop. Again, as you said, in the Cleveland area, about 50 machines, about 50 people working here on 3 shifts. We're aerospace certified, so we do a lot of stuff that requires that level of certification. During the pandemic, the aerospace stuff took a really big hit early on, and a couple of our biggest customers laid off, 85+% of the people because nobody was flying. And then a year later, everybody had all this pent-up desire to fly, and so they're trying to rebuild their staff in what most of us think is the worst labor market we've experienced in forever. And so they are still struggling to build that labor market back up, as are many of us. And so, that's been a challenge that we've still been kind of digging our way out of. We do a bunch of defense stuff. We do some aerospace stuff and then industrial. And then we have done some accessories for the firearm industry during the pandemic. That was a big industry that was very helpful for us to stay afloat because there was a lot of activity there. But so it's been 25 years that I've been here since getting out of the Navy and continuing to learn and grow and kind of figure out, hey, how do you motivate a team to come back and keep doing similar things. And I think keeping fresh projects and new stuff in front of us has been very helpful in that. We do a lot of recruiting of young engineers, both interns and recently graduated mechanical engineers in particular, to get them running machines and learning how to make stuff. We tell them we're going to get them dirty and teach them how to make stuff. And so it's been a fun program to get, pretty smart young people trying to understand the world of manufacturing. Most of them, a mechanical engineer, is typically kind of brainwashed to be a design engineer one day, and yet they typically in school don't get very much of the practical application of how to actually manufacture stuff. They do a lot of design for 3D printing, which is a great way to learn, except that then how do you scale an idea when it needs to be adjusted for manufacturing? And so that's been a fun program. Last 7 years, we've been doing a lot of that, which has been pretty cool. And then kind of our latest thing, we have our first robotic cell. It's been successful. It's a third attempt over the years to get a robotic loading cell, but we have a family of products that we're loading robotically, and we've been doing that since August, September, and it's proven to be pretty beneficial. And having a bunch of young engineers seeing a robot kind of like moths to the flame, they get excited about seeing cool stuff because it is pretty cool to
Yeah.
watch, and getting them plugged in, working to make that as effective as possible, and trying to keep it running over the weekend and stuff poses some unique challenges. But our team's been working on it, and kind of the next two cells are being planned and worked on and prepped for, because it is a nice way to both keep our engineers engaged and how do we do things in a different way. And it is just cool to be able to say, hey, we got this thing set up. We spent a lot of time and energy, and now it'll run until we come in tomorrow morning. So pretty cool.
Well, so we didn't talk about all this before we got in the call, but so I'm a civil engineer by training, and I went and had a job. Came from a blue collar family and first generation college kid, and there was a concrete production facility nearby. And I don't know why, but I just had the instinct that first of all, it was a really good job. Like, it paid well per hour and I could get lots of hours in. But on top of that, I had a sense I wanted to learn how things actually got built. And
Yeah.
when I was there, the guys on the team, of course, called me, well, they called me lots of things, but I was the engineer, right? And but we had fun. And so my first job out of college, what I was telling you that I was in Colorado, was I went and worked for a design build, drilling and blasting and soil nailing company, partially because I just want to get my hands dirty. And you just said you're doing that for mechanical engineers. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. Like, I appreciate that. And I
Yeah,
think that's important.
Well, there are a lot of students, especially I think nowadays, where there's so much computer-oriented stuff that they just really want to be behind a computer screen and making 3D CAD dance and doing all this stuff. And it's a kind of a video game to them, which video games tend to be popular with the younger generation. But
Sure.
then there's a bunch that do want to get dirty, right? Or certainly more than willing to, especially when they see a vision that says, hey, this is going to help me kind of understand kind of what it sounds like you intuitively had in mind, that, hey, if I learn how to do this from the ground up, then it'll help me when I'm kind of in bigger picture stuff. And so knowing that they're coming in not wanting to spend the rest of their life running a machine, but knowing that they got some gray matter to put to use, and it's important for them to get an understanding of how stuff actually gets done, so that when they one day get to design something cool that is going to solve some of the world's problem, that they can do it in a way that allow it to be manufacturable.
That's really neat. That's cool. How do you deal with it? It would seem to me like they might be getting job offers out of college sometimes for salaries and bigger companies. And how does that work out with your labor rate and the work that you're doing?
It's been an evolutionary process. So we built a process to interview that involves having them come in and actually run machines during the interview process, which it does two things. You build a process like that feels like you're part of a system. So they come in and it's a very structured interview process over typically 2 hours. And we either find that somebody really loves it or they don't. And if they don't, that's totally fine. If they do, then they're like, wait, I can do this for real and I'm going to learn stuff. And then what we've evolved to is where we kind of build a growing pay rate scale that they start at the hourly equivalent of 55,000. So, certainly more than somebody walking off the street to get a machining job, because they don't know anything really. And then every 4 months they get a bump to when at the end of 2 years they're effectively making the equivalent of 70,000. So what we found is that does at least two things. One, it sets a expectation of growth. So you're not here to come in, and if you're still doing the same thing on day 40 as you're doing on day one, we've totally missed the boat, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have that trajectory of growth that we expect. It makes it feel like, okay, it's a 2-year program, which they're coming out of recently graduating from a 4 or 5-year program going, sure, okay, it's a program. And they allow themselves to look at that last number, which is now up to 70. We've adjusted as we've gone, but they can go back to their parents and say, I'm starting here, but I'm going to be here in 2 years.
Yeah, on track.
And I'm an entry-level engineer. So parents like to hear the word engineer, which is why, they're more than happy to say, hey, go to school and become an engineer, because that's more socially acceptable at a cocktail party to say, hey, my kid's going to be an engineer, or my kid is an engineer. And so that having them compare where they're going to be in 2 years, which is typically a bigger number than what they're getting offered out of school, but they'll come in and start at a lower number. And we tell them that first year is a big wicket, right? Because they get to where they're 62 or whatever, somewhere in the middle between the 55 and 70.
Right.
And we either know, look, this one is one that's going to really stick and go, or this is one that, is kind of starting to stagnate and not excited to grow. And we're fine with it. It's just,
Sure.
hey, we want to have our eyes open and know that. So part of where this came from, right? I was in the Navy. And so when I showed up at my first ship, I was taking over a division for a guy who had been there for about 2 years. And I was there for a year and a half, just under 2 years. And the next person was coming to take me. So we're always bringing people into the program, knowing that there's going to be some that come out the other side. And so we're trying to grow, and we're trying to keep enough going on to keep them engaged. And some are better fits than others, and some love it more than others. And the job market goes up and down. And so there's a lot of variables, but most people in kind of running companies of our size and kind of our nature, they want to have somebody come in and run for 15, 20 years, right? And
right. So I picked up on that. That was different the way you said, because of your experience in the Navy, that just made sense to you, and that was no problem to you.
We spent all this time training them. We did, there's no question. And yet they pick up stuff so fast, and they want to learn. And if we've done our job in the interview and upfront process to find ones that have a humility about them that says, I got a lot to learn, they have a hunger to be able to want to get after it and learn and work hard. They're not afraid to get dirty, right? And then opportunity to focus on their learning and kind of stay in the moment. Hey, here's what I'm learning today. And then tomorrow's going to be something different, because we know they need variety to keep their energy going. So they rotate on all 3 shifts. So they spend some time on first shift, but then they spend some time on second shift. They spend some time on third shift. And I was doing an interview just the other day, and we have a couple degreed engineers running machines on third shift. And when I tell that to somebody who's running a CNC machine shop, they're, what Jedi mind trick did you use to get that to happen? And the answer is, it wasn't, right? I've given them a program to follow that everybody's doing.
Yeah.
And I tell them, I don't expect anybody to fall in love with second or third shift. If they do, they're happy to stay on it for a long time, but most likely they won't. But they'll also typically report that they learned a lot more during that time, because there weren't as many people to go ask questions. They got to figure more stuff out on their own.
Sure.
They have more different things that they could get trained to run and do. And so, I know it's been a fun program. And I think especially because so few people understand kind of the mechanics of it and what can make it work and why it would be worth it. Somebody who's spent 4 years, smart enough to get a piece of paper that said, hey, you're a pretty smart engineering kind of person, to then commit a couple years of their life to running machines to learn at the very base fundamental level how to make stuff. And so that we inarguably are overpaying them when they start. And it's probably fair to say, but by the end, we're inarguably underpaying them. And so,
in dollars,
right?
In dollars,
but
right.
And it's not about the dollars, right? I mean, our interns come in at $17 an hour. They can get higher paying jobs. There's zero question, but it's not about the money. It's about the experience of actually getting in, and it doesn't hurt that we have a bunch of young people in the building because of the program. So they come in.
Yeah.
There's
the
some young
energy
engineer
and
taking them on a tour, right?
And
so it just snowballs on itself.
That's really cool.
It's been fun. It's been really fun.
I had a person that helped me build my sales team back when I was working with my dad. And she said, as she helped me understand how to recruit people that you might think wouldn't come take this job, she helped me understand my full, compensation proposition, which was financial compensation, but also she called it intellectual and emotional compensation. Intellectual being all the things you learn that even if you leave, which sure we hope maybe you stay for a long time, but if you don't, that's okay. You're going to take those things with you, the things you've learned. And emotional is what you're talking about, culture and people and energy and building cool stuff. So yeah, that really works. So this is the part where I'm going to open up the screen share, because I saw this before I started talking to you. And what is on my screen is learn about a career at Bowden Manufacturing, join our team. And your website is really clear when it comes to, there's a section, I don't know that I'm going to pull this up, but there's a section on if I'm a client of yours, how I get a customer advocate. I saw that. with my own advocate inside. I also noticed that you have videos about 2-second lean, and I saw the young people replacing glass in some of the CNC machines, and I could see the energy, and you were having fun too while you were recording the video. So I would encourage anybody to take a look at, it's BOWDENMFG.com, Bowden, short for manufacturing.com, and we're on your careers page. But yeah, you've got a noticeably kind of young crowd there who is helping you.
So that top picture that you're showing by the sign, right? Those are all either interns or recently graduated young engineers. So, I mean, and with 55 people in the summertime, when we get, sometimes upwards of 20, 25 interns in, it really takes over the numbers. And yet it's a great way to get caught up on a bunch of stuff when you got a bunch of young extra enthusiasm in the building and rotating across all 3 shifts. So it's been really fun.
Get your hands dirty and build stuff is what it has there. And then the other thing, I think I was on a page, and see if I find it here, but this is what partially what you're describing about the job interview, and you lay it out so clearly, this 3-step, how it's going to go and what's going to happen, so they know what to expect, right?
Yeah, no, and the other piece to that, Wayne, so a new person interviewing will spend time with 4 to 6 of our teammates. And we do that intentionally. When the person leaves the interview, their responsibility is to tell us, hey, do you want to continue with the process? And everybody that they interacted with has a little critique form to fill out. And the bottom question on that page is, should we hire this person, or should we extend an offer to this person? And if we don't get yeses across the board, then we either have to have a really serious conversation with whoever said no or said maybe, to understand what their reservations were. But I mean, just yesterday, we had one where the one person said no. And we said, okay, so I said, hey, let me know what's going on here. And the person was coming through interviewing. And when our guy went to go show him something, hey, and the student was so excited to jump to prove what he knew. He's like, no, and it happened 3 or 4 times to where he was jumping the gun, and maybe 1 out of the 4 he was right. And so what our teammate knew was that when he was going to be trained something, this student was going to jump the gun, and if he wasn't being trained by somebody who was enough of authoritarian to push him back, it was going to cause problems. And the number one thing that we're looking for is that sense of humility that says, I don't know everything, I want to learn. And it's hard because when it feels like a job interview, I need to show off so they'll like me. And that's 180 out from what we're looking for. We're looking for somebody who's interested and excited about what's going on in the building and knows that they have a lot to learn. And so the other thing that happens is, if that person gets hired, it's because 4 to 6 people said that we should hire that person, which means now there's 4 to 6 people that are personally invested in making sure that person is successful. Because if it goes wrong, in the back of their head, they know, okay, when our HR person pulls out, hey, here's 6 people who said yes to this person and it went horribly wrong. How did that happen? Right. Because it's really easy to forget, oh, no, I didn't like that. I never liked that one. Okay, well, it's here on a piece of paper. You said that we should hire this person. And not that we use that as a thing. We just know that having people invested in our new people being successful is hugely important, because it's very stereotypical old line machine shops that, hey, kids, slow down, you're making us look bad. And all those cliches around putting people through what we went through when we were first learning stuff, right? Sure. I mean, I came from the Navy. You went to a boot camp. I went to Bleep Summer at the Naval Academy, and you expect to get beat on. Well, 25, 30 years later now, we live in a little different world, and it's not the same experience. And so we can't want to do to what we vaguely remember was done to us 25 or 30 years ago. That's not going to be productive for us.
Yeah. Wow, there's so much there. I won't go down all the places my brain is going right now, but how do you keep the top of the funnel, full of these young engineers, and probably others too? I mean, you probably would hire other machinists or people, right, that could do the work.
No, and having our careers page be clear and inviting. And I do think that the biggest area we've had success in is with the interns and young engineers. And because colleges host career fairs. And so you go to career fair, and at the career fair, all we're trying to do is, hey, are you interested in getting dirty, learn how to make stuff? If you do, give me a resume. We'll send you an invite and bring you in to take a tour. Right. And when you get them in the door, and it's interesting, Wayne, and you'll appreciate this, right? So let's say we go to a career fair and we bring home 40 resumes. We'll send out 40 emails inviting them to, and we'll list, here's 5 days or 6 days of times to come and tour an interview. Just send us. So they have to get the email,
Sure.
read it, process it, pick a time, and email us back their a preferred time and 2 alternates. And if none of those times work, just email us and let us know. We'll schedule a special time. So they have to respond to the email to select the time. It gets acknowledged. They have to show up on time, ready to engage with the team, do their stuff. When they leave, they have to send us email back. If we start with 40, maybe 25 will actually respond. 18 will actually make it for the interview. And let's say 8 to 10 of them are ones that we would say, hey, these would be a great fit for us. So we start with that funnel, if you will, and it gets down to, hey, here's 8 to 10 that we think we can invite to come. And there's other opportunities and options out there. So to take 40 to get 6 to 10 on a good crop is what it takes. So we typically go to Cleveland State, Akron, and Case, 3 career fairs a semester, and we'll come back with anywhere from 30 to 50 resumes from each, and we send out a ton, because a lot of people will say, hey, this is a great thing you're doing to give back to the community. And there's very limited piece that's a give back, right? So we're doing it to hire people to come run production for us. This is not, I mean, even a lot of engineering internships, and my daughter was a mechanical engineer at Penn State, as we were talking about. She did internships and mostly was in a cubicle doing extra engineering stuff. So her position felt like overhead to that company, but it was a path of recruiting. For us, they're coming in to run machines. They're coming in to produce product for us. It's not an overhead expense. It's a direct opportunity for us to provide production. And so it's a different equation. And so inviting people to come in that's the piece where any student who would want to come here to take a tour, I want them to do it. And I got that really from my dad, which is, you want to get them in the ability to either find out what they do or don't want to do with their lives. And it's probably just as valuable for that person to find out, hey, I don't want to do that, as much as I would love to do that. Because either way, you're going to get a reaction that will help them one more step on the way of figuring out what they want to do. And obviously we love manufacturing. So, anybody who can come in and pick up the enthusiasm for manufacturing that we have and want to be a part of it, hey, we're all in to do that. And so the altruistic piece, if you will, is that we'll interview kids that will determine this is not what I want to do. And it's helping the kid. Obviously, it's taking our time and energy to do that. But really, it's, enlightened self-interest, isn't it? We say, hey, we'll give the kid an opportunity, and we benefit from it almost as much as the kid does.
Yeah, got it. And then how do you keep bringing in work that is relevant and exciting? You mentioned a couple of different types of markets that you're in. What does sales and marketing look like for you?
So it is, I mean, again, always a challenge to get where we do with a lot of big defense contractors. And it was funny, we went to the Association of the U.S. Army has a big show in October every year. And so we go walk that show. And this year was the first time, and I think it's largely because of the whole Ukraine-Russia war thing, has put a lot of pressure on the military supply chain to help both feed the good guys in that battle, but then restock all the stuff that we need that's being sent over. And so it was the first time where we would go up to a booth and say, hey, you got any procurement people around? And they're right over there. Like, they actually wanted to talk to us. Like, because normally you go to those shows and they're just trying to sell to their customers, which are governments and all this stuff. But this time they actually wanted to talk to supply chain folks, because right now, with the market the way it is, with all the equipment that's needed, if you can build it, you can ship it to somebody. And they need to expand their supply chains, and it's really a tough time. People are getting busy, and then they can't staff, and it's really a struggle. And yet the unfortunate reality is these big defense contractors, it is so hard to get through to somebody who's actually buying something that they need, because they'll stick with a challenge that they know and a supplier who's just overwhelmed, but who's been on a supplier record for a really long time. And it's hard to try new things, especially in a big company where
Sure.
it's risky
Risky. Yeah, you get right.
for purchasing folks. So we are trying to make sure they see, hey, we have the credentials. We're dealing with a lot of big defense contractors. We thrive in that environment. As you mentioned, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that we do to be very proactive in our customer service aspect of how we make sure that they know what's going on, because especially the first time, it's really can be nerve-wracking to try
Right.
somebody new. And every customer every week gets an email from us with a updated status on every order that we have. And nobody in our industry, our vendors, we send it to our vendors saying, hey, fill this status report out for us. We have
Mhm.
1 or 2 customers that'll send us a similar thing asking for a status, but we do it without being asked, because look, if I was in a relationship with you, I'd want to know what's going
Sure.
on every week.
Yeah.
And so it's just a part of how we try and keep our current customers happy. And we talk about it with new folks, if we can get in the right room with somebody, which is in these massive corporations can be really challenging, where we know they need help, they know they need help, and yet their system is so unwieldy, it can be very challenging to get through. So, we're continuing to pound in those areas and see how we get new stuff to do. It's funny because for us, any new kind of machining job that fits in the wheelhouse of what we do is a whole new project for a young engineer in our building to, hey, let's figure this out, from what raw material we're going to buy to how we're going to hold it, how we're going to process it, and how we're going to check it, right? How do we make the inspection plan and do it?
Sure.
And so we tell them that the goal is to be able to hand them a drawing and for them to design and execute that manufacturing process from beginning to end.
Yeah.
The first time we do it with them, you give them a really simple job, and they've been running stuff. They're feeling pretty good. I can do this. And then you say, okay, let's start this from scratch. And their head explodes because
Right.
there's way more detail to it than they ever imagined. And so we try and have that moment happen sooner than later, because they can't help but feel like, all right, I got this job. I got this harder job. I can do this. I can do this. And all of a sudden, okay, how about this really simple job? Oh, that looks simple. And then you say, okay, now let's start from the beginning and go through it. And holy mackerel, there's a lot going on there. I don't even know where to start, right? And that moment of, hey, I still have a lot to learn. That's important to have that happen early enough in the process that it can build some momentum for the ones who really want to engage and think and figure out how to take something from beginning to end. It's a great design process for them. So
Yeah. So 25 years you've been there, and I love recruiting and creating programs for people that help them thrive and not doing exactly what everybody else does, which is why it was so easy for me to get interested about that. But you've been there for 25 years. I think I read the company has been around since 1952. Is that right?
that's true.
And you mentioned your dad just now, like quickly. I learned from my dad, so I don't know if he was involved or you just learned from him somewhere else. But like, what is a bit of the story about and the story of your time there?
Sure. So Bowden was started by a couple brothers named Bowden and one other partner back in 52. And my dad was a sales rep in the early 70s and had some friends that they were looking to invest here. There was one of the partners wanted to get out. And so they asked my dad to come in and run it. And the Bowden brothers used to work at GE in the purchasing department, and GE was going to go through some outsourcing. And so they decided, hey, we'll get on the outside and we'll do some manufacturing. And that worked great. When GE was busy, they were busy. When GE wasn't busy, they weren't busy. And so my dad came in to help diversify the customer base, which he helped do over the 5 years he was here. And they had a buyer. My dad was out west skiing and got the phone call from his partners, hey, the guy backed out of the deal. And so he said, well, why don't you just cut me the same deal and I'll just buy you guys out and I'll stay. And so that's what he did. I was 5 at the time. My younger brother was 4. My older brother was 9. And so my dad just stayed, and he was here. I got out of the Navy in 98, and really I interviewed a bunch of places, but it came down to it. I couldn't pass on the opportunity to work with my dad. We knew we'd be very compatible together. I had a cousin who took me to lunch within the first couple of weeks and said, Andy, you're going to love manufacturing. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I didn't know. And a year later, I'm like, I love manufacturing. It's really cool. You can see the beginning to
Yeah.
end of it, right? You learn business stuff, and I didn't have much business training at the time, but you talk about inventory. What does that mean? Well, now I can go out and look at steel and look at aluminum and say, okay, it starts to this, it makes this, this is the value that we've added, and now we got it to be able to provide to a customer. And so it's very tangible stuff. and figuring out mechanically oriented problems is pretty fun for me. And so we were just under 3 million when I kind of got here, and we needed sales at the time because we had come off a big project. And so I went out and learned what customers were doing, kind of stuck my nose in, hey, what can we help you with? And we got a couple customers and started to grow, and we got as high as 11. We were 8 last year, coming off kind of still struggling to recover from the pandemic, but we got some good growth stuff in the midst right now. And that up and down of manufacturing is always the challenge, right? And it's more fun to be going up than it is to be going down, for sure. But I would kid with people, hey, last year our supply availability capacity met our demand for about 45 minutes. And if those 45 minutes were consecutive, that would have been really fun, but they weren't.
Right.
Like 5 minutes in October and 20 minutes in November, maybe 5 minutes in December. I mean, but that's the joke, is it's either going one way or the other. And so dealing with the change, the inevitable change of workload, you get a customer and the project comes to the end of its life cycle, and then you're trying to get a new customer and ramp up into something new. But so it's been fun trying to continue to learn and grow and figure out new ways to do stuff and embracing new technology and new ways of thinking about stuff.
You seem to me like you still love it. I'm not saying you love it every day. I mean, we all have like moments or whatever, but you're really engaged and you're excited as you talk about these different pieces.
Yeah, no, it's really fun. And I think trying to build systems, and they're complicated systems because there's people involved. Right. And I mean, if it was just mechanical systems, hey, you design a system and it can repeat and repeat and repeat, that's great. But then you put these crazy people in the mix, which we all are.
Right.
It's really interesting to see. And the beauty is if you do it right, 2 + 2 can be 27, and really have it do something fun. And you find those spots where it didn't go so great. All right, we got to figure that one out again, because 2 + 2 meant -6. And so figuring out those missteps and working to try and improve and build systems that can grow and kind of learn and grow as they are. I love seeing especially young people figure stuff out and figure out what they really like to do. We all have this unique set of skills and tools that we bring to any kind of team, and how we plug those in, and it can be very, very satisfying when it goes well. And so that's the stuff that keeps me going.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to ask you 2 more questions. So one is these systems, like the system when it comes to attracting these younger people and the interview process and the things that I see on your website that are spelled out. I get it that you didn't do this alone. There's other people, but is a lot of that you're kind of being able to step back and see what's going on overall and creating processes and thinking about, wouldn't it be great if people came in and then we ask them this and ask them that? Is a lot of that like your form of art? I always say businesses like art, like creating art. It's just you don't use paints or clay. It's systems and people.
Yeah, and there's some of that. I think one of the most important lessons that I've learned, and I keep trying to make sure I learn, and literally earlier this afternoon had a meeting where if it's only my idea, and as you can imagine, I can talk with emotion and conviction when I'm excited about something.
Sure.
And even my senior team, I need to really push them hard to push back on me, because I can be I can end up making a decision. And when you're the guy in the corner office that owns the business, why, it's hard to push back. And yet I don't care if it's my idea that gets used. I just want the best idea. And I want us to not be afraid to try stuff and to figure out what does work and doesn't. And the compelling nature of the story that we're trying to craft that will engage young engineers to want to get there to learn how to make stuff for their betterment is something that is a story I know I can convey. When I tell the story, I read the book Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller, and I realized that his framework was what I was using so successfully to sell young engineers on this place.
Yeah.
And so I'm all in on Don and the story brand methodology, as it pertains to any way of communicating and living into a story, having our customers live into a story that we can help them with. And I want to throw a lot of good ideas out and see what sticks. And I want my team to do it. I want to continue to learn and grow, and I want them to want to continue to learn and grow, because I think that's really important. You can be in the same place for 25 years, and you can get 1 year of experience 25 times in a row, or you can actually get 25 years of experience. And we look back at the stuff that we thought was really good 10 years ago, like, okay, well, we've done way better, right? And so it is, I don't know, I get charged up doing it, and I need to keep my enthusiasm in check when we're making decisions, because if it's all my decision, then it's always going to be on me to do it. And I need them being creative and thinking through, hey, how do we solve these problems better?
Yeah, I love that. So I hear that actually, like, you're creating the canvas in that art analogy. You create the canvas so that your team can help put what needs to go on that canvas to bring the story together. So
Yep.
that's neat. Last question
That's what-
is, we connected on LinkedIn. I love meeting people on LinkedIn and then like really getting to meet them like this. And sometimes I even get to meet them in person. Sometimes they end up joining our business builder group. Sometimes it's not that. And it's just somebody I then get to follow and see what they're up to. And they add to our people, which you've done here. I know this has been something that's going to stimulate a lot of thinking. But I did ask you in a LinkedIn message, like, hey, are you in any kind of groups and would you be interested in joining business builders? And what you said was you have other groups that you are participating in now. And I said, oh, great. Well, then maybe we could hear about that. So could you share a little bit about, because part of the thing that I get excited about, and this is about you, not me, but I get excited about bringing these business owners together and having them in a place of creativity where they can share what's working for one person and what they're doing over here. And sometimes they'll kind of remember what somebody committed to and help hold them accountable. So I love that mastermind mixing it up. And it sounds like you've done some of that. So my last question I'd like to ask you is, how has interacting and being with other people from other businesses helped you grow and helped you create some of what I've seen on the screen and what you've described today?
So yeah, and it's actually, it was this morning at 10 o'clock. There's the one that's the most consistent. So every Wednesday morning from 10 to 11, there's a group of 8 of us that we get together. I've been part of that group for going on 2 years. They were actually going before, and I met them through, so Darren Hardy is a guy that, if you've seen me on LinkedIn, you've seen me post on a regular basis. He has a daily video that he puts out. And so I watch it and I repost it, I share it on LinkedIn with kind of my take on some aspect of what he did and what it forces me to do. And knowing that I'm going to post every day about it, it gets me to pay closer attention to what he's saying and how it would apply in my world. And then practice of kind of communicating that idea in a succinct post. And so he has a couple different programs. I've done all of his programs, but the kind of his peak one is called the Business Masterclass. And so the group of 8 of us have all been through at least one of those Business Masterclasses. And what I found in having a group that came from that organization, that event, so at the time it was probably 8 or 10,000 bucks to go, and you traveled to it and spent some time. So we have a group of people who've all invested significantly in their interest in personal and business growth and development, and are serious enough about it that they want to continue to carry those ideas forward and bounce off of each other. And we're all from different industries, which in some ways is helpful. I do think, and you and I touched in our messaging back and forth, that having one that could be just kind of my industry would also be helpful. But the different perspectives from different ages and backgrounds and locations in the country and ideas around stuff. And we've been doing it enough and we've gotten together once as a group last summer, but it's on Zoom, of course, and the opportunity to get to know people. And we have a standard format to kind of share our wins, our losses, our fixes, any help needed in our goals. It's a really good to both hold each other accountable to, and getting back into the ideas of the conference, because you go to a conference and you get so many ideas, you're all excited, and then you come back in 2 weeks, you're sucked right back into your daily stuff. And to take time out once a week to go spend an hour. Every other Friday, I have another group. There's 4 of us that came from the same event, but every other Friday at 3 p.m. And so that's been another one. And then I have a kind of a family business group that goes once a month on a Tuesday morning. And so, trying to balance, you want to spend, it's invaluable to be part of a group. And if anybody is listening that is feeling like they're on an island because they're running their own business and they're not connecting with other business owners, there's just stuff that you can only share with somebody else who knows what you're going through. And building that, whether it's once a month or once every other week or once a week, to build a network of those folks that if I have a question and I know that Chris is, particularly strong in that, or I know Cindy's particularly good at that, or Kim is, or whatever, you have somebody to go to bounce ideas off of. You know that you have to show up that time every week and be held accountable. Hey, this is what I said I was going to do. Did I do it? And if not, why not? And again, you're only going to get out of it what you put into it. And yet the opportunity to engage with other business owners going through it, it's an invaluable thing. And so, it's one of those things, it's right in the middle of my week. And I mean, it takes a lot I'm either totally on vacation off grid or I'm going to be there. Right. And so I try not to mess that up because it's such an important part. And
they need you. Right.
That's
what makes it. They need you. The other people in the group need you.
Yeah. It's part of it. It's a commitment. I also have a board of advisors, and the irony is none of them in my group also have a board of advisors, and they think of our group as kind of their board of advisors, which is true in many ways. I do think it's also helpful to have a couple of trusted folks that you let inside the door to see all the numbers and all the stuff. Because I went to the Naval Academy, I took one macroeconomics course. I don't have the financial background, and so I want to have other smart people that know way more about that and way larger scenarios than mine to help backstop me. Because hey, there's 55 families here that are counting on me to make sure we're doing good stuff, and I take that responsibility seriously. And so definitely encourage folks to get into a group. And obviously, I'm sure you got a good one based on our conversation, and just getting other people that are like-minded who want to continue to learn and grow and who'll commit to that time. And so definitely encourage that. I've gotten a lot out of it.
Awesome. Well, that's a great place to end. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your talent and insights. And again, anybody listening, Bowden, I said it wrong, BOWDNMFG.com. And Andy, are you open to, if anybody wants to connect by LinkedIn or anything like that?
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm on LinkedIn. Happy to connect.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again. We'll send you the episode when it's finished, and take care, business builders.
All right. Thank you for tuning into the Business Builder Way podcast. If this episode spoke to you, click that subscribe button and share it with a friend. That's how this message gets out into the world. If it is helpful for us to have a short conversation, I'd love to do that. Send me an email at wayne@businessbuildercamp.com.